period. We're first going to look at rabbinic descriptions of Israel in terms of what they felt was lost when the temple was...
recording. אבל
What?
אני לא יודעת איפה זה, עושה את ההקלטה.
Edgar, your number, week 5 is the cause of destruction, how they understood the destruction of the temple. Those are two different weeks on what it meant. And week 6, we're going to do a bit of creative work as I've gathered together a lot of sources and to show how the rabbis compensated for the loss of the land of Israel. Okay, Edgar, you can take this slide off and put on slide number 1. There you are. Can you make it bigger? Yeah, you got it. All right. Okay. We're now into Genesis literature. This is the very beginning, chapter 12. Talked a little bit about it already. What you have the text in front of you is that which I sent you. The yellow are the things I wish to emphasize. I'll presume you've read it before, therefore, and we'll look at the yellow parts. Go forth from your native land to your father's house, from your father's house to the land that I will show you. This is a very clear beginning to the Jewish people. Understand that with this, in the next sentence, you can, not the yellow, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. This is the start. God created the world, he related directly to man, and in each case, there was territory. With Genesis 12, we are, for goodness sake, what is this? With Genesis 12, we are at a point where God gives up. He said, I'm sorry I did this. He's going to do this a different way. He's going to choose one people, try and make it with that person, and bless the world through that people. That's the concept of Israel that dominates the Bible. It dominates Jewish thought in certain ways to this day. We don't try to conquer the world. We don't want everyone to be Jewish. We just have to be and do what we're supposed to be, right? But, next yellow, the Canaanites were then in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will assign this land to your offspring. Okay, major point. Abraham is there, but he doesn't really have it, right? Our start with the land of Israel is, I'm going to go, this is your future home. How in the world Abraham reacted to that, I'm not quite sure. Put yourself in the shoes for a minute, if you're in the head for the minute. This is yours, but not you, your great-grandchildren, you know. And it's a very, very strange original gift. Even stranger, oh, well, no, he builds an altar. That's nice. That's sort of an act of ownership. And right before the second yellow, you see he builds another altar. He also walked to the land. He walks through it. He moves through the hill country. In terms of a map, if you're interested, all of the forefathers' history is southern Israel, as far north in terms of staying someplace or doing something as Beit El, which is just north of Jerusalem, and everything else is down towards Hebron and Bethlehem, and even below that, Be'er Lahai Roi. It's all in that area, southern Israel of today, not the coast, not to the Jordan River, the hill country in the middle, very small territory. There was a famine in the land, however, and guess what? He goes down to Egypt. So within 12 verses or even less, there's skipped verses here. Abraham comes to Israel, promised it, sees it, and he's on his way down to Egypt because there's a famine. Edgar, can you take it off? Don't put the second one on quite yet. Thank you. All right, so this whole original statement has us going to Israel. Sounds like a huge moment, but he's gone by the time you get used to it. And one gets a sense in terms of literature that this ownership is a little bit strange and wifty at the beginning, a little bit complicated. We were there, we weren't there, it's ours, but it's not ours. How in the world is Abraham going to feel about this? And what is he going to do to make himself feel at home when he comes back, which he will? That we're going to see in the coming quotes and the coming pieces of literature. Anybody want to comment or find themselves in it? It's not a simple Abraham came here and we've been here since. It's not that. That can, if you want to use it in an argument with someone, fine. But our relationship with the land of Israel is very clearly ours, and very clearly, boy, this is complicated. Okay. Can we have slide number 2, please? You'll come. By next week, I'll figure out how to do this myself, and I apologize that it wasn't there. Okay. All right. How do you own something? How do you know it's yours? Right. The first element of this in the forefathers is fascinating because for many reasons, it keeps reverberating in Jewish history. We'll talk about that a little bit. I'll ask you in a minute, after we get off the slide, how does this reflected later? All right. And the Lord said to Abram, raise your eyes, go. This is, look where you are, north, south, east, west, for I will give you all the land that you see to your offspring forever. Up, walk about the land through its length and breadth, for I give it to you. I won't see all your hands. We're leaving the slide on, so anybody who knows this, perhaps just yell it out. Is there anyone else that you know that took possession of land by traveling its length and breadth? Bible. Give you 15 more seconds.
Oh.
It's a toughie. It's a toughie. Quite frankly, I didn't know it before I wrote the book. So I figured until I saw it when I was looking. The person who did this another time is Joseph. When Pharaoh appoints Joseph to be the viceroy of Egypt in the book of Exodus, he says to him, get in a chariot and traverse the land of Egypt. You are going to be viceroy. You have to travel through the entire land of Egypt. That's an act of ownership or rule, which Pharaoh assigns to Joseph. Slightly similar to what we have here. Skip down to the Joshua thing. It becomes very important in Jewish memory right there. Joshua said to all the people, thus said the Lord, the God of Israel, in olden times, your ancestors, Terach, Abraham, etc., lived beyond the Euphrates, but I took your ancestor Abraham from beyond the Euphrates and led him through the whole land of Canaan. Walking the land, touching the land in the Bible is remembered by Joshua as an act of ownership. That's not only is there the promise, there's walking the land. In the middle section, it's also, I mean, at another point, he says, how do I know that it, and God creates a covenant. It's a covenant between the two pieces in Genesis 15. But in the other two sections that I had here, walking and touching the land of Israel becomes a wild element of ownership when they're not in charge politically, okay? Edgar, take it off for a second. Don't go to the third yet. Thank you. I'm really making your work today. Can anybody, I just talk out, you don't even have to raise a hand, just put on your thing if you think it. Can anybody picture how that element, walking the land of Israel, reverberates later in Jewish history. You don't think anybody? Well, okay, I'll go on. Just tell me if you think I'm wrong. Tell me.
No,
Seems to, go ahead.
I don't know the answer, but what I do know is that walking the land is connected very much to pilgrimage, and pilgrimage seems to, traverse all the religions.
Wonderful. Yes, 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 and a little no. That's absolutely, absolutely wonderful. The idea of pilgrimage, which is born basically after the Crusades, that you have to go and touch the land of Israel, leads to organized pilgrimage. Annual times, we know in Turkey, there's this community. Everyone makes announcements a month before. They gather people and they travel to the land of Israel. Rav Nachman of Wrocław, that we'll read a little bit of his materials later, way later than that. He's the greatest Zionist among all the Hasidic leaders, much, much later than what we're talking about there. And when he comes and finally he suffers, he gets beaten and robbed, but he comes to the land of Israel. He lands near Haifa, gets off near Akko, walks 5 steps and says, okay, I can go home. They convince him to stay, but it is walking that really makes it. And in modern Israel, I am totally fascinated by how incredibly important it is to Israelis to hike the land and walk the land of Israel. It's different than hiking as we do in America. There are better hikes in Switzerland, trust me. There are better hikes in southern Spain. There are better hikes in Georgia. There are better beaches in the Greek islands. But walking the land is an incredible part of the Israeli ethos to this day. In
The
terms
Israel
of
Trail that everybody.
the Israel Trail, and they're building there's a trail, there's a walk across, there's a walk up and down. There's this, for those of you who might not know, the Israel Trail is a north-south trail where people actually, usually by stages, very few people do this once, walk the entire length of Israel from Metzulah down to Eilat. It is an incredible, and people have set up rooms along the way to host people that are on the trail. My kids in Yerucham have a little, I don't know, room with bathroom outside so that anyone who's on the trail, the Israel Trail, can cut off. It's only about a half-hour away and sleep there for the night and go back in the morning. And that happens all over Israel. The walking is an incredible act of ownership. I do wish, having spoken to Christians about 2 weeks ago about pilgrimage, I wish to just do this difference. The pilgrimage that we know from Christianity and most other religions, I don't know them all. Paul, if you want to correct me, she knows a lot about religions that I don't know, is to the place that's related to the person. You go on pilgrimage to the places where Jesus was. That's why the Tiberias and the Sea of Galilee is so basic and important. Why does the churches is so important? Israel's pilgrimage derives directly from this thing in Genesis and works through the generations. You want to be there and touch the land. In point of fact, there's a Jewish name you might know. I'm keeping talking. I'm free associating, but that's all right. There's a name you might know, a common Jewish last name, more specifically Sephardic than Ashkenazic, but also for Ashkenazim, which is Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi does not mean you have ancestors in Jerusalem. Yerushalmi means that you made pilgrimage.
Oh,
So if the name Yerushalmi is someone's name, it means someone in his family, her family, came to Israel in the time, whenever it was, way back when. So we have two elements so far. We have building altars, and we have walking the land, that the forefathers have set a pattern of owning it when you don't have it. So therefore, it becomes wildly important for the Middle Ages, when we don't have it, to walk the land. It goes back to there. Okay, we're going to go on with some of the sources from Genesis. Slide number 3. Last year I did this. We got to figure this out. Last year I just pushed a button, I could get this. Slide 3. All right. Okay, now we're up to another character. All right. This is Isaac. This is the second of the forefathers. I'm only speaking about forefathers today as forebears. I know we have foremothers and forefathers, but the text in the Bible talks mostly about the forefathers, and we'll stay with that nomenclature. All right. There was a famine in the land. Isaac is a shadow figure in Genesis. Most of what he does, his father did. He builds altars, his father built altars. He he digs wells, his father dug wells. It's really, one thing is unique about Isaac, and therefore is important to us. There was a famine in the land. We saw what Abraham did when there was a famine. He went to Egypt. The reason is simple. Israel gets its water from rain. Egypt gets its water from the Nile, which gets its water from the middle of Africa. And therefore, when Israel has a famine, Egypt does not. That's why Joseph can buy food much later in Jewish history from Egypt. All right, there was a famine in the land. So the Lord had said to Isaac, do not go down to Egypt. Oh, wait, your father did? I don't care. You don't go down to Egypt. You stay in the land. I'm going to bless you, and you have to stay here. So he doesn't go down to Egypt. He goes to the Gaza area. There was no war at the moment. I bring you the Rashi because even though it's a little romantic and not quite, it's not Bible, but it gets the idea. He got the idea. He had intended to do at the bottom of the page. He had intended to do as his father during the drought. God said, do not go down to Egypt, for you are a pure sacrifice. Remember, his father was going to sacrifice him, right? And other territories are inappropriate to you. Stay in Israel because it is a higher place. You are a higher individual. You can't leave. You have to stay here. You have to stay here. So in Isaac, we have an element which was not in Abraham, and that is stuff that he did do, like dig wells and all that. But here, stay in Israel. Okay.
Question, Benji, was
Yeah.
You said he went to Gaza? Was
Yeah.
Gaza considered part of the land of Israel?
Yes. He went down to the Ashkelon area, the Gaza area where the Philistines are. Okay, you know what? I'm going to answer when I can see everybody's face. Edka, would you get rid of the slide for a second? It's a great question because it tells us more about Israel. There is no map of Israel in the Bible. There are maps of Israel in the Bible. Okay? That's another thing we won't be covering because there is no one map, and I'm not going to be able to show you one. And you cannot say to someone here and say here's what the Bible said. The largest map of Israel in the Bible, when it refers to the map from the river of Egypt to the Great River, that means from the probably the river that goes through the middle of the Sinai Peninsula all the way up to Mesopotamia. Huge. We never got that much. Never got that much. That's the largest map. But there are other maps. There's a map of settlement. There's a map that deals with law, when laws apply to that and the land of Israel. There's historical periods in our borders went up and down. When I said yes, in the general sense of Egypt, of Genesis, he said, walk around, whatever you see, I'll give you. So presumably it's in that map, but there is no one map. It's covered, and it certainly was not outside the map of Israel at that time. And the different maps have different relationships to Gaza, and even what's clearly Israel. In the halachic map, that is when you have to bring all these fruits and stuff. In the halachic map, Rosh Pina, not Rosh, what's up north? Is that Rosh Pina? Yeah. And the Haria are not in Israel. So it's a complicated question, and it's not just one answer. Okay.
Maybe Rosh Hanikra, maybe.
Rosh Hanikra, man. Thank you. Rosh Hanikra. It's not in Israel. It belongs in the halachic map. Okay, that was the second forefather. Let's go to the third. If you would put up slide number 4, please. Okay, this is a toughie, all right? Because Isaac was told that he couldn't leave. Jacob is told when Joseph is going down to Egypt, there's food in Egypt, there's a famine, that they can go to Egypt. Jacob is told to go to Egypt. He goes to Beersheba, the southern extreme of where he is circling around. I'm sorry. That's the second part. The first part. When Jacob has to leave Egypt. First, he almost kills his brother wants to kill him. The first part, Jacob sent out for Haran. He goes north. He goes back to the family home. When he gets to Beit El, right above Jerusalem, he has a dream. And that's the famous dream of the angels going up and down, et cetera, and so forth. And what's important is what goes on in the dream. There's lots of beautiful stories there. But following with the yellow, the ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you. You shall spread to the east, west, north, and south. So he's leaving, and God says, don't worry. You have this. You see me. See the picture up north. It's a wonderful dream. God reassures him. He's obviously upset because his father wasn't allowed to leave, and he's told, go to save yourself. It's a great story. I could tell you more about it, but we don't have time for it now. He's sitting down there in the valley. If you've ever been around Jerusalem, you see terraces where they make of the valley of the mountain areas that you can plant agriculture. And if you're sleeping down in the bottom and you wake up, you look up the sides of the mountain and you see steps leading up to heaven. And the ladder in the Bible, the Jacob's ladder, is really a set of steps. It's a real thing it really fits. Okay. But what's important to us now, he's reassured. He goes, he marries his wife, he marries a second wife, and all the concubines, they come back with 11 kids. The 12th is born on the way. And he's back. But then there's a famine in the land. I'm sorry to have skipped that right away. This time he's told, you can go down to, Joseph calls and says, come down. So he goes down as far as Beersheba, and he gets a panic attack. How can I leave the country, right? God called to Israel and said, vision by night, Jacob, Jacob. Whenever there's two words, it's ultimate, two names, it's ultimate drama in the Bible. It's Abraham, Abraham at the sacrifice. It's Absalom, Absalom when David is mourning his child. Jacob, Jacob, here I am. I'm God. You don't have to go down. And listen to how he identifies himself. Sacrifice to the God of his father Isaac. Jacob sacrifices to his father's God. because his father's God wouldn't let Isaac leave Israel. And he sacrifices, and God says, I'll go down, I will bring you back. And as the Rashi comments there, fear not. Jacob was afraid. He said, don't be afraid. You will have this land the way I promised it to Abraham, to your progeny. Okay? All right, take this thing. So we have this story, and we're reading this every year through Genesis. It's going on and on, that the people are Israel-centered. They come there. Even when they leave, they're Israel-centered. When the one is born there, he has to stay there. They dig wells. They build altars. They wander around, but they plant crops. Isaac, who has to stay there, also is unique in building. He plants the land. He plants the land. They make this effort, and it is not only difficult, it's impossible to separate the land element from what's going on, even though they do not rule. So every year when we start out reading about Israel, we read about Israel, which the Jews didn't rule. They were not in charge of the land of Israel. Okay, one more in this thing with the forefathers, if we can have slide 5, and then we're going to go on to a bit of the Torah literature, which is perhaps even more fascinating in certain ways.
May I ask a question?
Excuse me?
The name of Jacob and the name of Israel. God calls Israel and says Jacob.
Yes.
Why the flipping of the name? Is this significant here?
Well, God calls Israel, his name is Jacob, as a blessing, because Jacob, who is then Jacob, struggles with an angel who tries to stop him from coming back to the land. And, oh, for God's sake, Edka, do you see what I see? All right, I'm going to speak fast. I don't know if we can even handle this, people. I'm going to do this quickly. He calls Israel as a blessing because he struggled with that angel. And ultimately, the land of Canaan, which is what it's called in the Bible usually, and through to the land, through most of the entire Torah, is renamed. Not Israel isn't named for the man, isn't named for the land. The land is named for Israel, who is the last forefather who gives birth to the people by having 12 sons. So it's that route around. All right, I'm going to
Benji, if we get cut off, we can just come back in again. I don't know what happened. Something got mixed up with my account. That it
Okay,
stopped
fine.
being
Slide number 5. I'll do what I can into. He said, Jacob says to Joseph, don't bury me in Egypt. Now remember, Abraham, we didn't see that. Abraham bought burial land in Israel. Jacob also bought land in Israel, but Abraham bought a burial spot. He said, I'm a stranger here. Let me buy it from the Hittites. They let him buy it. That becomes a major element here. Jacob's in Israel. I can't be buried here. Bury me in in the land of Egypt, and they do that. Joseph, when he's dying, doesn't say, take me to Israel to be buried, but he does say, he already sees what's coming. He says, I'm about to die. God will take you all out of here. When you do, when God has taken notice of you, you shall carry up my bones from here. All right? Moses took Joseph, and then we see in Exodus, Moses took Joseph's bones with him. Burial is another element that typifies the forefathers' relationship to the land of Israel. Cut the thing. Does anybody relate to that across history as the way Jews related to the land of Israel? Ah, okay. You may not be aware of it, but in the Middle Ages, if you were very rich, you sent your body to be buried in Israel.
I just wanted to say some people do that today, from the United States to Israel. I know they're not necessarily so wealthy, but they
Yeah.
think that important to do it.
In the Middle Ages, you had to be wealth. There's also something else that people do when they're buried, if they're not sending their body to Israel. Does anybody know what that is? Yes, Judy.
They take soil from Israel and put it in with the burial in other lands. I mean, we know the United States.
Yeah. I was privileged to be able to bring back dirt from Israel for my mother so that when she died, she could have it in her grave. Sorry. It's amazing that this thing, it goes all the way back. It becomes one of the ways that if you don't rule, even if you don't live, you you come. Okay, before
Benji,
yeah.
what I recommend is that maybe we go, I'll stop the meeting and we'll come back in again and it will reset itself to 40 minutes so we don't get.
Okay, we will go to
I really
7:30.
apologize, everybody. I don't know, my Zoom account got messed up. I don't know what happened here, but our support tomorrow will take care of it. I don't want to bother him again.
Will the second session automatically be
I'll record it. I'll record
okay.
it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a 2-minute break. I'm going to